If you want to know the answer, just ask ChatGPT. Could I beat a cheetah in a race? No! No, of course not. It's a f***ing cheetah. Jesus. He'll beat you and then eat you. Today's video is sponsored by Surfshark VPN. More on them in just a bit. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Brain Blaze. As always, I'm your host, Simon. Welcome to the show. I'm here, one of my writers. In this case, Danny writes me a script. TV shows that were cancelled for wild reasons. Trying to think of a good one. I was like, Bill Cosby. It's like, no, but he was off the air a long time before he went to fucking prison. I wonder if anyone goes to prison today. Probably. Let's carry on. Good grief. If I was lazily flicking through the TV channels with a glass of ginger beer and a pork and egg pie, I'm not sure I'd settle on watching a reality series set in a mortuary. Reality... That'd be demonetized on YouTube. Can't talk about dead people. No.
I'm watching you, Wazowski. Always watching.
Whew, she's nuts.
The subject of death and corpses and grieving relatives hardly pumps you up for an evening of solid entertainment in which the laughs just never stop coming. But that was the premise behind the charmingly titled Good Grief, a 6-part series commissioned by the Lifetime Network in 2014. This cannot be real, Danny. What the f***? The show would focus on the highs and lows of the Johnson family mortuary in Fort Worth, Texas, run by husband and wife team Dondra and Rachel Johnson. It doesn't sound particularly riveting to me, but maybe I'm being a little harsh. Perhaps Good Grief would have been a surprise hit and kickstarted a new trend for reality shows set in family-run mortuaries. But we'll never know. Although all 6 episodes of Good Grief were completed and scheduled for broadcast, it was destined to become one of the many TV shows that was cancelled before a single episode aired, after Lifetime pulled the plug on the project and buried it forever.
Thank you so much for wasting my motherfucking time.
What? So these are like never seen episodes? How do we know about this? Weirdly, in this case, the abrupt cancellation was nothing to do with the show itself, but it should have been, to be honest. It was more to do with the unsavory headlines generated by the Johnson family shortly before the series was due to air. Uh-oh, what did you do? You stealing jewelry off the corpses or something? Not that they did that. I don't know what they did. We're about to find out.
Honey, you've got a big storm coming.
So I want to interrupt today's video to talk about a very important issue. How do you protect all your internet activity? Whether you're streaming movies or shopping online, your online activities need to be safe and secure. And that is where today's sponsor, Surfshark, comes into play. Surfshark is a VPN that makes everything you do online safe and private. And the best part is that it's very easy to use. Like, I've used other VPNs in the past. It's like, why is this so complicated to set up? What's with these login details? Why is it so hard? Surfshark, you download it, you sign up, you're good to go. It's not complicated. It's very easy. Whatever device you're on, it's not hard. With Surfshark, you can connect to popular websites and unblock streaming platforms. You can easily access different content libraries around the globe. Netflix is the obvious example. Whatever you've got at home, other countries have different stuff, and you just like, boop, 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 fire up Surfshark, boop, 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 you're somewhere else, and you just refresh Netflix, and amazing. And if you're worried about staying safe on public Wi-Fi, Surfshark's also got you covered there too. Whether you're an avid cafe-goer, traveler, wanderer, Surfshark will always keep you safe, even on unknown networks. It encrypts your online data and keeps you safe on public Wi-Fi. And with Surfshark Alert, Antivirus, and Search, you can add on extra security features to keep your personal data safe. Plus, with over 3,200 servers in 100 countries and GPS spoofing and an IP rotator, you'll have all the technical specifications and features that you need to stay private and secure. So, go to surfshark.deals/blaze or just click the link in the description below and enter the code BLAZE to get 83% off and 3 extra months for free. Plus, they've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can take advantage of that if you're not happy, but you will be because it's Surfshark. And now back to today's video. The problems began when the landlord of the mortuary decided to kick the Johnsons out over unpaid rent. It wasn't the first time that this had happened to the Johnsons. They'd previously been evicted from another mortuary in Fort Worth just a few years earlier. Yo, if you want to stay in your business premises, pay your rent. Simple. But on this occasion, the landlord was to make a gruesome discovery when he checked in on the building after the Johnsons had moved out. Oh no. It's like they left the bodies behind. I don't know if they did that. I should stop saying things that they didn't do and I'd get myself into trouble. These are all just jokes and commentary. We're about to find out what they really did, I assume. The first thing he noticed was that the place stank to high heaven. Wait, did they really leave the bodies behind? And this is probably something to do with the 8 decomposing corpses which had been scattered randomly around the property, including the remains of 2 infants. What the f***? man. It's alleged that the financially troubled Johnsons had been accepting thousands of dollars from bereaved families to cremate the remains of their loved ones, but hadn't always been able to get the job done, so they had opted instead to just hide some of the unrefrigerated bodies in discreet places around the house. I'm guessing this unusual business strategy wasn't comprehensively covered in the reality TV show. Oh my god. It's like, yeah, the reality is we don't have the money to cremate the bodies, so we've just been tucking them away in the cupboard. Now, just the small ones like the children. Rachel Johnson quite remarkably conceded, we may have dropped the ball, while husband Dondra was a little more defiant when he told the press, we've done nothing wrong, this is a funeral home, this is where dead bodies belong. Yeah, but not if you're supposed to be like burning those dead bodies. The courts disagreed, but it's difficult to figure out from the conflicting reports what exactly happened to the couple. Dondra was reportedly fined $20,000 and given a 2-year prison sentence for 9 counts of abuse of a corpse. Oh my god, this was really bad then.
Do you happen to know what the fine is here in Cyrodiil for necrophilia? Just asking.
But a recent article suggests without explanation that his convictions may have been overturned. Okay. What happened to Rachel is even more fuzzy, as she appeared to serve a 21-month prison sentence, but on entirely unrelated charges of food stamp fraud. Okay. Whatever the case, Lifetime wasted no time in cancelling the entire series of Good Grief before broadcast, and we'll never know if there were any subtle clues hidden within those 6 episodes. Just like in the backgrounds of one episode, there's a little face poking out from a cupboard, such as somebody tripping over a decomposing corpse while trying to put the kettle on. They should have broadcast it under the title of Holy Shit. Hidden Spikes. If someone were to tell you that the Monty Python team once filmed an entire series which never saw the light of day and which had been locked up in the vault ever since, you might find that inconceivable. And of course, it's not true. Oh. Okay. But it's perhaps even more inconceivable that the late Spike Milligan, who is often credited as being the biggest influence on Monty Python, has several TV episodes in the BBC archives which has never been transmitted. The co-founder of BBC Radio's groundbreakingly surreal Goon Show, which ran from 1951 to 1960, is widely considered to be a legendary comedian, writer, and poet with friends in high places. Never heard of the Goon Show. I've heard of Spike Milligan, but if someone asked me what he did before I read that, I'd be like, I feel he is a British author from back in the day. That's what I would guess. I wouldn't know who he was. During an award acceptance speech in 1994, I'd also assume he had died long before 1994, but okay. He famously interrupted the reading of a gushing congratulatory letter from his long-term fan Prince Charles to jokingly describe the future king as a little grovelling bastard. He later faxed Prince Charles to ask, I suppose a knighthood's out of the question? You groveling bastard. Little sausage fingers, you.
You make me sad. So be it. Come, Patsy.
But while the former Goon Show made a relatively successful transition from radio to TV comedy, Spike certainly took a couple of questionable turns along the way. The first of these was a 1969 ITV sitcom entitled Curry and Chips, which was written by Johnny Spite from an idea by Spike. Johnny was reportedly the highest paid TV comedy writer in the UK at the time, despite the fact that his producers often had to literally drag him out of the pub to finish off the latest script as the cast were waiting in the studio to rehearse. This is the thing. Money just doesn't motivate some people. So they'll just be like, yeah, no, whatever. But it's like, you still need them to be motivated if they're incredibly talented. And often there's probably that correlation between like incredibly talented people and just not being interested in money because they're just interested in their creative talents, which is really difficult if you're trying to produce a TV show. I bet. He's been known for creating the comedy character Alf Garnett, an aggressive, loudmouth, racist idiot who was first introduced to UK TV viewers in the sitcom Till Death Do Us Part in 1965 and survived through various different TV formats right up to Johnny Spite's death in 1998. I have heard of none of this. The idea behind Alf Garnett, or perhaps the defense of his creation, was that his extreme offensive views were regularly challenged and shot down by other characters, and the audience was meant to be laughing at him. Yes, this is fine. Like, of course we can have racist characters in TV shows. Just don't make them the good guys.
I hear you're a racist now, Father. What?
But this can be a dangerous game to play, and whilst I've quite recently enjoyed revisiting the world of Alf Garnett, there are occasional wince-inducing moments when it seems that everyone forgot what they were meant to be doing and ended up creating situations in which the audience are laughing along with Alf's extreme diatribes. Yeah, that's risky. But that's on the audience, to be honest. The person who's writing it might be like, oh god, you're not supposed to laugh at that, but everyone laughs at it and you're like, oh god, you're all a bunch of racists. What have I done? Still, it was much harder to defend Curry and Chips, produced for ITV in 1969. The single season of 6 episodes followed the adventures of Kevin O'Grady, a Pakistani-Irish immigrant who comes to England in search of work and finds employment in a factory full of racist workers. Johnny Spite reckons that the idea was to ridicule native working class attitudes to immigration, and it's true that Kevin is occasionally depicted as the smarter character who comes out top in the fiery debates. Wait, this sounds fine. What's the problem with this? Perhaps Curry and Chips might have been convincing if the opening theme tune hadn't consisted of the terrible wailing of a piece called "Oh Pakistan, the Poppadoms Are Calling." That's a problem. Perhaps the show might have been more credible if Kevin wasn't portrayed by a blacked up Spike Milligan wearing a turban and talking in a caricatured accent. That's the problem. This is why I didn't get. I'm like, that sounds like a good concept, and then they just sprinkle in a little bit of actual racism.
Look, I am just born in Pakistan. What a bloody fool the man is. Bloody fool.
Just there, why not? Why not? Perhaps the show might have been a bit less offensive if Kevin's nickname, which is used frequently throughout the show, didn't contain a racial slur that we can't even repeat here. And perhaps the show might have worked on some level if Kevin himself didn't keep banging on about how much he hated Pakistani people while pretending to be of pure Irish heritage. One of Kevin's infamous lines in the show, put in cruder terms than I'll use here, reveals how Kevin left Pakistan to get away from Pakistanis, only to find there were now too many Pakistanis in England.
I'm born in Pakistan, but my parents are Irish.
Keep in mind, the guy playing this guy is not Pakistani. And even if he was, this is very thin ice. The show attracted a barrage of complaints, but not for the reasons that you might think. It seems that the viewers at the time were only offended by the excessive swearing in the series, with one grumpy critic noting that the word bloody was used 59 times in one episode. Oh my lord! Where are my pearls? I must clutch them. The Independent Broadcasting Authority took a different view, though. Although everyone involved was keen to push on with a second series, the ITA took the rare dramatic intervention of cancelling Curry and Chips on the grounds that it was racist. Good for you.
No shit.
Although it was later released on DVD, the series has never been repeated on television since. But even that wasn't as bad as the fate that befell the Melting Pot. Having clearly learned his lesson from the Curry and Chips controversy, Spike Milligan co-wrote another 6-episode sitcom in 1975, this time from the BBC. I'm going to guess that he didn't learn his lesson at all, because the next line is, in which he blacked up again to portray the illegal Pakistani immigrant Mr. Van Gogh, who arrives in England by boat, accompanied by his father, played by a blacked up John Bird. You learned your lesson, didn't you? The last show you were on got cancelled by the regulators for being too racist. Did you not think to make something less racist, maybe? They settled down in a guest house populated by Irish Colemen, Black Yorkshiremen, Scottish Arabs, and Chinese Cockneys, and the premise of this melting pot is largely based on the equally prejudiced residents all hurling racist insults at each other. During production, Spike proudly boasted to the press that the series was guaranteed to offend everybody. And for what it's worth, I'm of the strong opinion that good comedy should be allowed to offend without the need to constantly tread on eggshells, otherwise we might as well just give up on comedy and just concentrate on producing TV sewing bee competitions. But I still think you need to apply a tiny bit of reason and equality in your approach. Of course you do. This isn't black and white, where it's like, oh, well, if you have no racism in comedy, then comedy is dead. I'm like, no, just try and use your brain a little bit. It doesn't need to be extremely one way or the other. It just needs to be just a little bit thoughtful and thought out, and not everything's black and white. Come on. Maybe there's some scope for a sitcom which is equally offensive to every race and culture, but you're hardly starting out on a level playing field when the two main Pakistani characters are caricatures played up by blacked up actors. And perhaps the biggest problem with both Curry and Chips and The Melting Pot is that unlike Alf Garnett sitcoms, there's no voice of reason to be heard. They're essentially just reinforcing negative attitudes towards race and immigration rather than challenging them. Writer Clive James described The Melting Pot as the worst thing to happen to race relations since Pharaoh went sour on the Israelites. And although the pilot episode was broadcast, the BBC swiftly decided to shelve the remaining 5 episodes forever. Spike claims that this was because the show wasn't funny enough, but it's more widely accepted that the BBC realised the whole thing had been a frankly ghastly idea. It's just quite strange to think that one of the most influential comedians of the 20th century created 5 whole episodes of TV material which have never been seen and are still gathering dust in BBC archives after nearly 50 years. Do you think the BBC still has them? Or are they like, we have to destroy this? If this got out, it would be bad. You know, they probably got a fat old incinerator at the BBC, don't they? And every now and again they go through the archives and they're like, okay, let's find out what we have to destroy this year. Man vs. Beast. The surprising thing about a 6-part TV show, Man vs. Beast, produced in 2003, is not the fact that it was hastily pulled from transmission, it's the fact that the format was based on 2 US specials from Fox, which did actually get broadcast at around the same time. The idea was to pit humans against animals in a series of fun athletic challenges to determine which was the superior species, or at least have a bit of fun trying to figure out if a top-class sprinter could beat a giraffe and a zebra in a 100-meter sprint. This is so pointless. Why are we doing this? If you want to know the answer, just ask ChatGPT. Could I beat a cheetah in a race? No! No, of course not. It's a f***ing cheetah. Jesus. Beat you and then eat you. Over the course of 2 specials, the audience were treated to the spectacles of a competitive eater taking on a Kodiak bear in a hot dog eating contest, a sumo wrestler competing against an orangutan in a tug of war, a US Navy SEAL, the humankind not an actual seal, pitting his skills against a chimpanzee in a challenging obstacle course, and perhaps most bizarrely of all, a group of 44 people with dwarfism taking on an elephant in a contest to determine who could pull a DC-10 airliner the fastest over a short distance. Well, that's just plain bizarre. All of this naturally prompted complaints from animal rights groups who protested that the animals were being forced against their will to participate in exploitative acts for human entertainment. Quite aside from anything else, I can't help thinking that the format was fundamentally flawed anyway, as the animals wouldn't have been aware they were participating in a competition. Is it entirely fair to pit a professional athlete against an orangutan in a dead hang contest if the orangutan doesn't even know that he's participating in a dead hang contest? The 2 specials attracted disastrous ratings and were universally panned by critics, one of which considered Man vs. Beast to be another sign of the impending apocalypse. That's a harsh. If you made something and someone was like, the end of the world's coming. This must be, because it's so shit. You'd be like, I've done bad. I'm not very talented. Meanwhile, Slate critic Robert Weintraub observed, just as the other networks started to muscle in on Fox's chokehold on moron television, Rupert Murdoch's boys gave us a little reminder last night of just who is the king of lowbrow content. I can only assume that ITV bought the rights to the format and produced their own full series of the show before assessing the negative reaction, which had prompted Fox to quietly abandon the idea. UK host John Fashionow... Wait, really? I assumed Danny was being sarcastic, but actually this happened. UK host John Fashionow had predicted that Man vs. Beast would prove to be an enormous success and that the ratings would go through the roof. However, we'll never know what the UK version would have looked like because ITV pulled the show just days before the first episode was due to be broadcast, resulting in ratings of precisely 0. I'd like to think that the UK version would have dared to go a few steps further by getting a group of primary school children to compete in boxing matches against a mob of kangaroos. However, although the scheduled series was slammed as sick and degrading by animal welfare charities, and even Dame Judi Dench chimed in to exclaim that she was horrified by the concept, ITV never admitted that it was a bad idea. Well, you kind of did, because if it was a good idea, you'd have put it on the air, wouldn't you, of ITV? The network insisted that the decision to pull the show had nothing to do with criticism from pressure groups. They reckoned it was just a scheduling issue and that the series would be shown at a later date. Let me guess, it's not. Over 20 years later, we're still waiting on ITV to make good on that promise. Generation KKK. Okay, here we go. If I thought a reality TV show set in a mortuary was a bad idea, I was obviously in no way prepared for a reality show focusing on the wacky everyday life of members of the Ku Klux Klan. Oh, why? Why would we do this? During a pretty frenzied 5 days of activity, the cable network A&E first announced the imminent launch of Generation KKK in 2016. This was an 8-part series which followed the lives of 4 prominent Klan families, but each family included a member who was keen to escape the white supremacist organization for good. This immediately sparked a huge backlash from civil rights groups who feared that the show would normalize hate groups. Viewers would tune in to see the White Knights and Imperial Wizards and Grand Dragons ends and withered bell ends of the KKK gathering together to burn crosses. But we would also see them dealing with everyday family problems such as fixing the paddling pool in the back garden and arguing over whose turn it was to do the school run. There was also obvious concern that the show could generate publicity for the organization during a period when KKK chapters had already reportedly doubled in the US. As one of the Imperial Wizards himself notes in the unaired footage, media appearances are good for reaching out to the masses, and there's no such thing as bad publicity in what I do. Considering that the KKK were likely very careful in deciding how much access would be given to the production team, it could be argued that they were pulling the strings for their own benefit. A&E was swift to respond by retitling the series from Generation KKK to the slightly less snappy Escaping the KKK, a documentary series exposing hate in America. That should do the trick. They also announced that the series would be accompanied by viewer guides and educational curricula, and instead that the aim of the show was to expose and combat racism and hatred in all its forms rather than glorify it. You're like, yeah, at first we were glorifying it. Yeah, we were. Yeah, it was a lot of glorification. And now we realized that was wrong. To be fair, it might well have been interesting to view the content before we passed judgment. Apparently, one of the threads of the series focused on a conflicted 14-year-old girl whose father is a proud Imperial Wizard in the KKK. Although the girl used to attend cross burnings when she was younger, and her father has plans for her to rise through the ranks of the organization, she now wants no part of it and is frightened of admitting to her dad that many of her best friends are African American, as she feels she'll be letting the family down. Still, whichever way the stories were told, the series was unlikely to conclude with the members of the KKK coming to their senses and denouncing racism while casting their robes and hoods into the sea. This 5-day period of launching and retitling the show was to conclude with A&E announcing that they weren't going to broadcast it after all. This wasn't necessarily anything to do with the actual content, it was more to do with the discovery that the producers had actually paid the KKK members for access into their twisted world. You know, if you're a producer and you're cutting a check to the KKK, you know that's not going to look good. You know that's not the right move. Surely. Come on. You're a big TV network. You know that's not a good look. Some might be horrified by the idea of a TV network cheerfully paying money to a hate group in return for control access, which the KKK viewed as a recruitment drive. But the main issue from the perspective of A&E seemed to be that paying any subjects for documentary access, be they members of the KKK or members of the Hugging Tree Society, was a violation of their policies. And that will never do. But all of this gives me an idea for a new reality show, which would be a mash-up of the unseen formats that we've mentioned today. Beast versus Beast. A group of KKK members armed with only teaspoons compete against a bask of saltwater crocodiles in a 500-meter freestyle. It's a massacre. Anyone unfortunate enough to lose their lives is still awarded the compensatory prize of a guaranteed spot in the prestigious Johnson family mortuary in Texas, propped up behind the vacuum cleaner in the cupboard under the stairs. Savage, and deservedly so. The KKK. Thanks for watching. That's where we end today's video.
I'm watching you, Wazowski. Always watching.
Whew, she's nuts.